In 1988, my family and I had a 52-acre farm in Hillsdale County, Michigan. We were the only black people in the county. We raised animals. We had cows and chickens, and, we were living off the grid, basically. And then we had our house fire bombed. We were the only black people in the county.
Why don't we see more black farmers in America today?
The decline in the black farmer had a few facets to it. One was the Great Migration, and then you had horrific laws of Jim Crow, where blacks weren't able to obtain credit. Under the Carter administration, they came up with the Farmers Home Administration that was supposed to help blacks get loans, and it did the opposite. You weren't getting farm ownership loans, you weren't getting farm operating loans. I take a step into the United States Department of Agriculture, and I step back in time. 387 days to process a black farm loan request, and less than 30 days to process a white farmer's loan request. And the top 10% getters in U.S. farm subsidies get over $1 million per farmer, and the average subsidy to a black farmer is $222.
And I've never been as worried as I am now about whether or not my kids and grandkids will be able to carry on.
For King, the main problem starts with the fact that they can't sell for profit.
I just would like to see somebody help us get our markets back. We need our exports, and we just need to be paid for what we do. And that's not happening. And we're in real trouble.
But that is not the only issue. King's wife, Melissa King, and farmer in Biggers, Arkansas, Scott Brown, said they are struggling to afford the cost that is needed just to take care of the farm.
The prices that we're getting now are prices like they were when we were children, and what it costs for us to farm is astronomical now. I mean, the price of a combine when we were kids was, in the 20,000s, and now it's 100,000.
I farm 800 acres by myself. I can't afford any help. I farm with paid-for equipment. All my tractors are 50 years old, and I can't hardly make this deal work. How's the guys farming 5 and 10,000 with 20 hands and $1 million combines and $1 million drills going to make it work?
As a black farm operator, the one thing that I'm sick of hearing from white farmers is how you're struggling. Excuse me, my people not only struggle, the USDA objectively spent more money trying to keep black farmers out of farming and to actually help us. Meanwhile, white farmers were not only getting land, you're getting conservation payments. Do you even know what that is?
Back in 2021, the government finally tried to throw us, black farmers, indigenous folks, and other farmers of color, a little lifeline. I'm talking about Section 1005 of the American Rescue Plan, which was supposed to give $4 billion in debt relief to the people who've been discriminated against for generations by the USDA. That money, that was justice, not charity. But guess what happened? A group of white farmers, a lot of them from Texas and Arkansas, got so pressed at the thought of us getting help, they pulled together and filed a lawsuit to shut the whole thing down, and the court sided with them. That section of the bill? Dead. Fast forward to right now, and those same folks, they out here crying for bailouts, saying they need help, they struggling, and I'm watching this like, oh, now y'all want help from the same system you fought to keep us out of? Where was that energy when it was our turn? This ain't just about farming. It's about how racism shows up when we get a chance to breathe, even for a second. It's about how systems will let others claim victimhood while ignoring the centuries of harm done to black communities.
The American Rescue Plan, which became law in March, was supposed to deliver billions of dollars in aid and loan forgiveness to the nation's underprivileged farmers. Instead, those funds are being held up by a federal lawsuit. The promise of aid that fails to materialize is all too familiar to many farmers of color, long subjected to discrimination in government programs. We went to Virginia to talk with a fourth-generation black farmer leading the call for change.
John Boyd has been tilling this soil for the last 3 decades, land that's been in his family for 100 years.
My grandfather was able to raise 15 children on his farm.
You say you're the classic case
Yes.
of the black farmer.
Classic case.
Why?
Many black farmers were tied historically to the land, either through sharecropping or generational land. That's the way the blacks did it, and we were old school farmers. These are tobacco curing bonds.
Boyd is president of the National Black Farmers Association, representing thousands of black farmers across the U.S.
We farmed with limited resources. Banks weren't lending us any money. USDA really dogged black farmers and poor processing time. It took 387 days to process a black farm loan request and less than 30 days to process a white farm loan request.
In March, President Biden announced his plan to right that wrong, providing $4 billion in loan relief to socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers in his $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan.
This debt relief is designed to catch them up.
We spoke to Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack in April about disparities in the last year alone.
In the COVID relief packages that were announced prior to the rescue plan, of those self-identified farmers who identified as white or black or Hispanic, black farmers received roughly $20 million in help through those COVID packages. White farmers received over $5.5 billion. And the reason for it is because they were able to grow over a period of time, over the decades, able to fully utilize the full extent of USDA programs. Black farmers were not able to do that because of discrimination.
But last week, a federal judge in Wisconsin halted those payments, saying the U.S. Department of Agriculture's use of race-based criteria in the administration of the program violates their right to equal protection under the law.
It's one thing to help people because they themselves have been the victim of identifiable past discrimination. But it's a wholly other thing to hand out benefits or to grant the preference based solely on the color of one's skin.
Rick Eisenberg is the president of the Wisconsin Institute of Law and Liberty, the firm representing 12 white farmers across 9 states that challenge the policy.
So you don't argue that systemic racism has perhaps disadvantaged black farmers in the past?
Certainly there have been some farmers who have been black farmers who have been discriminated against in the past. There was a lawsuit. The way to stop discriminating on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race and not to think that there is some way that we can balance the scales by discriminating just a little bit.
The USDA isn't backing down, telling CBS News, "We respectfully disagree with this temporary order and will continue to forcefully defend our ability to carry out this act of Congress and deliver debt relief to socially disadvantaged borrowers."
I wasn't aware that some farmers weren't receiving the same as other farmers.
Cheryl Ash and her husband James are plaintiffs in the suit. They breed hogs in Jasper, Missouri.
They're only about 4 days old.
I didn't know that existed, but I think it doesn't matter what color of skin you have. If you're a farmer, you should be able to qualify and get those programs and those grants. Equality is best, especially from our government.
At the turn of the last century, there were nearly 1 million black farmers in America. The USDA now says there are only 45,000 in a country of 3 million farmers. And less than 40% of them, 17,000, qualify for assistance.
At the bottom, they would use old rocks from the farm.
For Boyd, those numbers showcase decades of discrimination and disparity that he pledges he will fight to remedy.
Well, let me say this. I'm going to die a farmer. I'm very optimistic about the future, but I want people to know that it's not going to happen by itself.
Well, the Department of Agriculture is going to answer the suit. They are essentially advising borrowers to just move forward with their claims. But as we speak, there are some 5 other lawsuits that are already coming down the pike.
Why don't we see more black farmers in America today?
The decline in the black farmer had a few facets to it. One was the Great Migration, and then you had horrific laws of Jim Crow, where blacks weren't able to obtain credit. Under the Carter administration, they came up with the Farmers Home Administration that was supposed to help blacks get loans, and it did the opposite. You weren't getting farm ownership loans, you weren't getting farm operating loans. I take a step into the United States Department of Agriculture and I step back in time. 387 days to process a black farm loan request and less than 30 days to process a white farmer's loan request. And the top 10% getters in U.S. farm subsidies get over $1 million per farmer, and the average subsidy to a black farmer is $222. No comparison. We're not even in the same league, and we haven't even made it to that book. And as that process became more and more difficult, more and more blacks left farming.
You see, both federal and local governments have worked very specifically to deprive, obstruct, and prevent land ownership by black people. Local banks can deny loans. Local governments can write legislation that bolsters those banks' racist practices. And the same thing happens on a federal level too, which has resulted in catastrophic losses within the black farming community.
So we experienced that from the government and banks, but we also faced that at local markets. There was a time period where tobacco brought a higher price when I sold it through my white neighbor than it did when I sold it on my own.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
What year?
This is in the 90s.
Shut up.
Yeah. And
Does that make you mad? It makes me so mad.
Well, it makes me mad. It gave me the drive and the motivation to want to fix it.
Yes.
And that's what I sought out to do, and that's what I've been doing for the past 30 years.
When black farmers sued the USDA for racial discrimination in 1993 and won, they proved in court that the federal government was systematically denying loans and financial support to black farmers. That led to the largest civil rights settlement in U.S. history. But that settlement money has only made it to roughly 20,000 farmers of the 100,000 plus that were represented in this suit. Why? Because bureaucratic red tape has caused the proverbial can to just keep getting kicked and rebundled under new bailout packages.
As a black farm operator, the one thing that I'm sick of hearing from white farmers is how you're struggling. Excuse me, my people not only struggle, the USDA objectively spent more money trying to keep black farmers out of farming than to actually help us. Meanwhile, white farmers were not only getting land, you're getting conservation payments. Do you even know what that is? The white farmers and their families for generations were given land, and they will be paid to not farm that land. Because it's for conservation, it's for environmentalism. The same white MAGA farmers who vote against climate change initiatives, who vote in favor of policies that harm the environment, are now the same crybaby who are crying about them not getting conservation payments. Excuse me, you don't even believe in environmentalism, but you want payments for not farming your own land. You want payments for not working your land. You want payments for being lazy. You want payments for being white. That is the usual suspect, the usual problem in this country. The reason why we spend so much money on freaking farmers and subsidies is because of white farmers. Because black farmers don't even ask the freaking USDA for anything because we know better. You want to know why? For generations, the USDA has done nothing but help white farmers get them land, get them conservation payments, help them with animals, help them get freaking education, mechanize their freaking farm equipment. You do all that shit. Now you want to come to me saying, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. I've been doing that, and that's why I'm not struggling like you are.
Why are black Gen Xers so pissed off nowadays?
That's a good question. In 1988, my family and I had a 52-acre farm in Hillsdale County, Michigan. We were the only black people in the county. We raised animals. We had cows and chickens, and, we were living off the grid, basically. And then we had our house fire bombed. We were the only black people in the county. The next day, they said, when they put the fire out, they said, we can't tell if it was arson or not. Only the fire marshal himself can make that determination, and he won't be able to come out till tomorrow. So the next day, my dad went to go get some lumber so he can build up a fence between the tree lines so people can't just drive up on our property. And while he was gone, my mom was waiting on the fire marshal. I was kind of watching her. I was kind of peeking around the corner watching her. She was 5 months pregnant. She was trying to rake in the yard. She had her 12-gauge shotgun with her in case the people with firebombers came back. but she was too small to like hold it. She could just prop herself up. While I'm watching her, 2 Hillsdale County sheriffs pulled up. They grabbed her. They reached around the gate and grabbed the shotgun, put it in the trunk, handcuffed her, and drove off with her. My dad came home with all this lumber. I ran out and told him what I saw. He left. He came back and said, yeah, they arrested your mom for felonious assault. He said she had the pew-pew up on her in the pocket of her shoulder pointing at vehicles as they drove up and down the road. I knew that was a lie. My mom was not like that. They arrested her. They convicted her of felonious assault. She did 133 days in Hillsdale County Jail, felonious assault. When they let her out, as she was 5 months pregnant, we all moved back to Detroit. I got back to Detroit. I absolutely hated it. I had nothing in common with anybody my age in Detroit. I'm just a farm kid. I was naive. And then I got a summer job. I got a job. I got a bike. It was the best feeling of freedom that I had since I was on the farm. I rode it everywhere, and I'm riding at night, and then I got robbed. Great. Now I hate this place all over again. So I got my check at I cashed it at the check cashing spot. I'm walking home. I'm paranoid. I had $222.13. I bust my ass and earned this money. I had my head on a swivel. I'm looking one way. I hear, hey, from the other direction. My heart started beating fast. I look, it's 2 cops. Whew. Start making smile a little bit. Like, man, they don't know how bad they scared me. They walking up to me. I'm getting ready to say something. They gut checked me and doubled me over. And then they grabbed my arms and stood me up while I'm coughing and trying to catch my breath. They handcuffed me. They take everything out of my pockets, my money, my keys, my wallet. They said, what the f*** are you smiling about? I can't even talk. I'm coughing. I'm trying to catch my breath. They put me in the back of the squad car. They called in the dispatch and gave my ID. Dispatch called back all clear. The officer said, you heard her. She said you had a warrant for $222.13. You going to pay it here or you going to pay it at the precinct? I said, I didn't do anything. He said, oh, you didn't hear me. She said, you have a warrant for $222.13. You going to pay it right here or you going to pay it at the precinct? Which one you going to do? And I was mad. I was scared. I was frustrated and I yelled. I didn't do anything. Officer jumped out the vehicle, got in the back seat with me, pulled out his pew-pew and stuck it in my neck and said, N-word, do you know I'll fucking blow your brains out right here? And I was frustrated. I was mad. I was terrified. And I was trying to keep that tear from dropping down my face, but I couldn't. And I hated that tear more than anything else. And I had to watch my breath and say, sir, I didn't do anything. He started laughing, looked at the cop in the front seat and said, well, you heard him. You're going to pay it at the precinct. They took me down there. It was Friday afternoon, about 5:30. They didn't fingerprint me. They didn't take no pictures. They just put me in the cell. Monday morning, they just let me out. I walked home. I got home. My parents were freaking out. They didn't know where I was all weekend. My dad asked me, where were you? I told him. He said, get in the truck. Let's go up there. We went back up to the precinct and my dad was pissed. My dad is an old civil rights guy. Look at my pictures on my page of him getting arrested for ordering a cheeseburger. He was one of them guys. He said, y'all gonna tell me why y'all had my son in here all weekend? And the officer, I'll never forget it, started smiling and fake typing on the computer and was like, we got no record of your son being down there. He asked my name or nothing. My dad said, bullshit. You gonna tell me why you had my son down here all weekend? And the cop was like, well, we was probably out gangbanging or something, selling drugs or something. My dad was like, my son ain't like that. Motherfucker, you gonna tell me why you had my son? And he stood up and unsnapped his weapon and said, sir, you got a weapon on you? And we left. This is 1988. 1989, I remember watching these stories about kids my age wiling out. I never forget that verbiage in New York and how they were like a pack of animals and the police grabbed them and got confessions out of them. And it was a New York billionaire who had everything he could ever want in the world was advocating for the death penalty for these kids that were my age. I'm sorry, what were you saying about KKK and never seen them before?
And so now, you see why I say there's no need for these white farmers to be crying for a bailout. Because when black farmers were drowning in debt, struggling under a system that had denied us land, loans, resources, and respect for over a century. Where was the sympathy? Where were the emergency relief bills then? Where were the lawsuits to support our rights? Let me make it plain. We've always needed assistance, and not just for bad harvests or global supply chain issues. We needed help because of intentional policies that excluded us, stole from us, and worked against us at every level. The USDA itself admitted in 1999, in the historic Pigford versus Glickman case, that it had systematically discriminated against black farmers for decades. We're talking loan denials, delayed payments, paperwork disappearing, and officials flat out refusing to serve black applicants. That ain't just negligence, that's racism in policy form. And even when the federal government finally said, "We see what happened, let's do something about it," and passed Section 1005 of the American Rescue Plan, that $4 billion in debt relief wasn't some special handout. It was a reparative act, a tiny down payment on the massive debt this country owes black farmers. But before $1 could be paid out, before one piece of paper could be processed, lawsuits started flying, a coordinated effort by white farmers, mostly from Texas, Arkansas, and Florida, saying they were being discriminated against now. Think about that. They blocked relief not because they needed help, but because they couldn't stand to see us get any. And now, in 2025, here we are again. Farms across the country are suffering. White farmers are feeling the pressure. Some are praying for bailouts, calling on God, saying this administration or that president has failed them. But black farmers, we're suffering too. And not just at the same level, we're being hit 10 times harder. Land ownership for black farmers has dropped from over 14 million acres in the early 1900s to just 1.1 million acres today. And even that's being threatened by rising costs, corporate takeovers, and a lack of access to capital. We're less than 2% of all U.S. farmers, and yet we've carried more than our fair share of pain. But you don't see us running to the press crying for sympathy. You don't see us begging the system that's failed us time and time again. Why? Because we already know the truth. We've been conditioned to understand that when help comes, if it ever comes, it's too late, too little, or tied up in a courtroom by people who never wanted us to have it in the first place. That's why we're not surprised anymore. We're not shocked when we're left out. We don't expect the cavalry to show up, because it never has. And so when I hear white farmers now saying they feel abandoned, I get it, I do. But maybe this is the first time they've ever had to feel what it's like to be ignored, denied, and told to wait while the bills pile up and the land slips away. Maybe now they get a taste of what it's like to be a black farmer in America. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this with hate. I'm not celebrating anybody's pain, but what I am saying is this. If we had to tough it out for generations with no help, no voice, and no mercy, then maybe now it's their turn to see what that feels like. Because black farmers have always prayed for help. We've prayed for the land, the loans, the laws to finally lean in our favor. And just when we think the blessing is on the way, here comes a lawsuit to take it back. So to all the folks now crying out for relief, I say this. Tough it out. Dig deep. Do what we've always had to do. Survive on your own with grit and grace and God. Because the system you thought was built to protect you, it ain't coming. And to my people watching this, don't ever forget how they move when it's our turn to get help. Remember this moment, because it shows us again why we have to build our own systems, support our own farmers, and keep pushing for justice. Not just for ourselves, but for the next generation. This ain't just about bailouts. This is about balance, about truth, about finally seeing how it feels when the shoe is on the other foot. Stay strong, stay informed, stay rooted. I appreciate y'all for watching. If this spoke to you, hit the like button, drop a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Until next time, I'll see you in the next one.